Good afternoon, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest. Today, we're going to be talking about the current state of swords in the game. With the release of Spine Blade, there's a lot of questions. How many do you need to farm? Who's it useful for? What should you be planning? What are the benefits? What is the break point at which 20 defense penetration is better than plus 15 slash attack? We're going to talk about all of that. Let's go ahead and dig in. Now, I do have all of the listed characters that can actually equip the Spine Blade here on the screen right now. And I have kind of broken down the weapons that are best for them and kind of the characters that are left off to the side. Now, most of the sword-wielding units, with the exception of Titus that have like an elemental blade, the elemental blade is most likely going to be their best in-slot weapon. There may be some exceptions, particularly if you are trying to stack accuracy, but for the most part, if you're able to hit your opponent and you are capable of equipping a elemental weapon, hands down that is going to be the best piece of gear you can wear. Now, one thing to note here is that Brotherhood is a little bit different. Same with Lazalia Sword, just because they do not have the same modifiers as the normal elemental weapons. So they are kind of in their own categories, and we'll talk a little bit more about them. There are also 5 units here you'll see that are in green. These are units that can equip the Spine Blade, but honestly, Lohengrin is just going to be much better for them. There's not really any need for these units to have access to defense penetration because they're either spell blades or they're red mages or they are kind of in a different category of sword wielders. Now, coming down towards the bottom, we do have the 9 units that can actually, I would say, benefit from having the Spine Blade if you don't have access to the other swords. And these would be the units that are basically unable to use any type of an elemental weapon. So that would be like Belo, that would be Mont, that would be Dwayne, that would be Titus, that would be potentially Zazan, right? It would be kind of this category of units that we don't see a lot of use out of, with the exception of like Duan, but we might potentially see some use, and especially if you're a new player with Mont. And there is also Whisper, who's going to be getting her EX as well here in the near future. So there is some relevance. Now, Titus, I did put into this list, even though he does have access to Brotherhood, because there could be some situations where having access to Spine Blade is actually better than Brotherhood for Titus. And I would actually argue, because Titus is going up against King Mons the majority of the time, is kind of what you would want matched, I would think. You probably actually would want a Spine Blade on him if you are able to get enough crit already on him to build up his crit. So let's talk about the stats on Spine Blade real quick, and we'll kind of make the point of why it's such a good piece of weapon in terms of like a neutral sword compared to the other swords. Now, Spine Blade does come with attack 154 on the assault form, which is the version you'll want to go for. What's more important though is it does have accuracy 14 on it and critical hit rate 3, which is pretty good, right? There's not very many swords that have access to such a high attack of 154, as well as having accuracy 14. The break point for the defense penetration 20, to my understanding, the opponent has to have about 28 to 30 defense, and that would be about the equivalent of plus 15 slash attack. Now, again, I'm not a math expert. This is just what math experts have told me. But if you think it's something different, make sure you say in the comments down below. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at stat comparisons across the elemental blades and the neutral blades as well. Now, almost always Spine Blade will be outdamaged by the elemental weapons, but there may be a situation where maybe you want more accuracy, and maybe you're kind of saying, well, is it going to be worth it to put the elemental blade on if I can't hit? And in that situation, that's actually a good call out, because a lot of the elemental blades, with the exception of the light sword and the flame tongue, don't really have the best accuracy. And this is, you know, the specs that I have on right now are kind of like their best accuracy forms. A lot of times people just have them built for assault, right? And so the accuracy is significantly lower. So like in Ice Brand's situation, the critical gives accuracy 7, but in a lot of situations, you know, you're probably not using the Ice Brand in critical. You're probably going assault, right? And so then you have to look at things like Lazalia Sword, where Lazalia Sword has accuracy 20, attack 162, right? And that benefits Ice Sword wielders, has very high accuracy. So I would say for Ice users, probably most of the time I would more likely use Lazalia Sword than I would Spine Blade, but it would be really close. If there's a lot of people who don't have access to Lazalia Sword because it's from a very old event now, right? Like that comes from the Final Fantasy Tactics event that we have only seen once in the game. If you don't have access to Lazalia Sword, all of a sudden Spine Blade becomes one of the best accuracy weapons for all ice units if, you know, your Ice Brands don't have accuracy on them. And this is also assuming, right, that people have Ice Brand leveled, or they have it at a +4 or a +5, which a lot of people probably don't. So Spine Blade and the amount that you're going to want to farm is really dependent on what type of gear you already have, how many elemental blades you have, and what they are kind of built as. Thankfully, the Flame Tongue and the Light Sword do have more accuracy on them, so I would say they are almost 100% always better than a Spine Blade. But once you get into Ice Brand, once you get into Coral Sword, you can kind of see situations where maybe you want accuracy instead of, you know, Coral Sword's assault form, right? Which is absolutely possible, especially when we get into a situation with like Charlotte coming out in the future where maybe she doesn't have the best accuracy anyway, and you're going up against like Zazans, right? It'll be interesting to see. Now, if we're comparing it to just neutral swords, taking a look at like, you know, Nagnarok and Lionheart, right? Did I just call it Lionheart? Oh my god, I can never remember what the gunblade is called. I can never remember what the gunblade weapon is called. It is Lionheart. Okay, it is Lionheart. But taking a look at the neutral comparison, you can see that the AIM version of Lionheart has accuracy 17, attack 117, and Nagnarok has accuracy 1, attack 162. Spine Blade basically overshadows both of these in that it has almost basically the attack of Nagnarok and the accuracy of the Lionheart combined into one. So it really becomes kind of the best neutral sword that you can actually equip in the game. Now again, that's if a unit is equipping a neutral sword, or you're going up against opponents who have very high evasion. So lots of kind of situations to think about. And I think on the surface, when you first start gauging Spine Blade, it's really easy to be like, you know, when would I ever use this, right? And I think for a lot of people, Spine Blade, like they don't put together that it's just the replacement for Lionheart and Nagnarok almost. And it's almost a replacement for Lazalia Blade as well. So I think about how often I've used Lazalia Sword, right? And I look at Spine Blade and the kind of similarity in stats in a way with Lazalia Sword. And I'm thinking, you know, most enemies are going to have about 30 defense, assuming you don't lower the defense on them, right? King Mont definitely will. But I just think like, yeah, I use Lazalia Sword quite a bit. Now I can use Spine Blade and get a, you know, an equivalent result almost, which will be pretty good. Now, in terms of all of the neutral units down below as well, there are some things we have to look at, specifically with Whisper. Whisper does get Protect Break for that defense -20. Tidus, of course, has that Jet Shot -30 defense. So immediately when we're thinking of neutral weapons for just our kind of units that don't use elemental weapons, that definitely puts Whisper and Tidus in kind of a weird position. I would say though, Tidus probably not using Jet Shot all the time. I would say Whisper, maybe not even getting the chance to use Protect Break all the time. And honestly, Whisper, maybe not even equipped with a sword all the time, depending on how you are building her. So I kind of put Tidus and Whisper in kind of like a weird category up here just because I didn't know how to classify them. Titus, Balo, you know, Zazan, these guys, you're not going to be farming a weapon for these units. These units are going to get whatever weapon is in your arsenal. If you're looking for units that would use Spine Blade, I would actually say Mont would almost use Spine Blade all the time, and Dwayne will probably use Spine Blade all the time as well. And they both naturally have defense penetration already in their kits, so it is going to make sense that they do have a weapon with even more defense penetration, right? It kind of comes all together. Dwayne will have about 40, regular Mont will have about 40, so it just kind of synergizes well. And then you have Gafgarion, who, you know, there isn't very many MR units that still see some moderate use, and I feel like Gafgarion is one of those units who, you know, whether you're running like a dark formation and you just need to slide another dark unit in or what have you, Gafgarion's kind of that unit. So I could see building a Spine Blade with the intention of kind of slotting in with Gafgarion. How many Spine Blades should you build? I would probably recommend building 2, potentially 3, just because it is going to be the most likely best neutral sword for a while. It's a straight up power increase, and I think it'll be pretty darn good, right? Now, of course, is this going to be better if you are going into raid content where you're guaranteed to hit and the enemy has no defense and you're lowering defense? No, it's not going to be as good. But you know, you still have Nagarok sitting around. You know, you could slap on, you know, people, I don't know about you guys, but I have so many Nagaroks sitting in my inventory that, you know, it's not a big deal. So definitely kind of a piece of gear for a changing time, and I hope you guys are excited for it. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. I will be streaming later tonight after my Final Fantasy XIV raid, so I hope to see you guys there. As always, if you do want to support me, make sure you use dig.gs/coins. I love it when you guys use my affiliate link, even if it's not to buy coins. Even if you're checking out on Amazon, make sure just before you check out, you go to dig.gs/coins and click on that checkout box from there. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.